Hello and welcome to the MoneyMagpie Invest podcast. I'm Jasmine Birtles, and today I'm joined by former Pensions Minister Steve Webb, who's currently a partner with LCP, which is a pensions advisory company. Hello there, Steve.
Hello, Jasmine. Nice to be with you.
Well, thank you for joining, Steve, because I asked you to join because of my growing concern about the UK's ability to pay the state pension, and not just the UK, frankly. Countries across Europe, I think, are having a problem with this, and in the West generally. What's your feeling about the situation? Are you quite laid back about it, or are you increasingly concerned as well?
I guess if I start by agreeing with you, Jasmine, on the scale of the problem, but I might be slightly less pessimistic than you on whether we can do anything about it. But it's worth saying that this is an issue about pensions, but it's also an issue about things like health and social care. Because in all three of those cases, so I will be 60 later this year, shockingly, hard to believe, I know. And obviously, by the time I'm 70 or 80, then I'll have paid into a state pension, but all the money I paid in will have gone.
Hmm.
It will have paid for my parents' state pension. So that's what they mean by an unfunded or a pay as you go state pension system. But we also have effectively the same for health and social care. So if I need the NHS acutely or indeed in a chronic way in decades to come, I'm not setting money aside now. Nobody else is. It will be paid for by tomorrow's taxpayers. So there is a genuine issue, clearly, a genuine issue that as we live longer, the things that we will cost will all have to be borne by tomorrow's taxpayers. So a crucial question is how many of them are there going to be? And one thing you can do is raise the pension age, and we'll probably come back to that. But that means people keep working for longer, so that helps a little bit. We're not having enough babies. In simple terms, fertility rates are dropping, birth rates are dropping. So we're not producing enough for the next generation. So the whole set of issues around migration, economic migration, comes into the mix. But fundamentally, yeah, if we don't do something, we'll have more and more older people, and particularly very elderly, because in terms of health and social care, it's the very elderly who are the really expensive ones. And I say that with a very elderly father who's turning 94 this week, and he's currently in hospital. And you see how the acute use of the health service really ramps up in the final years. So a lot of big challenges, but I think there are things that we can do.
Well, yeah, there's lots to unpack there, of course. And what I find, and this is something certainly that I was thinking for a long time, is that most people feel that they put money into the national insurance every year, every month, and they feel that they've got a pot somewhere, that the government has this pot of money for each person, and it's been invested, and that's what comes. And then it's quite a shock when you find, as you say, that it's pay as you go. To me, I keep saying it's a Ponzi scheme, um, which is not very kind. But that when you think the money that you put in, you think for yourself, immediately goes out to others, and then, as you say, what pays you is, you hope, some other people who are working now. And it's kind of worked after a fashion, for a number of decades, but it seems to me that successive governments have given too much to pensioners. And even if we did have more babies, we had more immigration, we're kind of kicking the can down the road, because those people are going to want more and more as well when they are retired. Is there a way that we can change the whole way we look at the state pension, where it's not something that we live on, but it's just an extra, maybe something that has to be means tested?
Lots of questions there. I think. I
Yeah.
mean, it's worth saying that I don't think the way the state pension system works is dishonest, in the sense that if you imagine after the Second World War, when the current system was created, we wanted a land fit for heroes. We wanted elderly people not to live in poverty. So we wanted to be able to pay them a pension there and then. Well, we couldn't wait 50 years for them
Right.
to pay in 50 years worth of money and then build up. And, so
Yeah.
we had to start the system before there was a huge pot of money to pay. So that's in a way why we have a system where retired people are paid out of today's workers. And back in the day, of course, people died a lot younger. So you had far more workers, far fewer pensioners. So it was sustainable. And I don't think then it was foreseen just how long we would all live. And one of the big things that hasn't happened is state pension ages just haven't kept pace. So if I give you an example, state pension age for men was reduced to 65 just after the First World War. And when I became pensions minister in 2010, it was still 65 for men, and it was scheduled to still be 65 for men in 2020. So, for 100 years of staggering, breathtaking improvements in life expectancy, male state pension age was not going to change at all. So that's why the recent history of state pension age changes has been controversial and difficult and rapid, partly catching up with decades and decades of kicking the can down the road. So I think part of the mix is going to be state pension age increases. We're 67 in this parliament. So by 2028, it will be 67. 68's on the table for 2046. That will probably be brought forward. And my children are in their 20s, and it would be astonishing if their pension age wasn't 69 or 70 or something of that ilk. So that's part of it. It's a blunt tool because there are plenty of people who won't work to that age, and what do we do for them? So that's part of the mix. I think a second part of the mix is the role of the state and of private saving, because increasingly now we've been automatically enrolled into a workplace pension, and that is a pot with our name on it that we pay into, our employers pay into, the taxpayer pays into, and that is then ours at retirement. So one thing you can do is change the balance gradually between the unfunded bit and the funded bit, but it has to be done very slowly, because otherwise one generation just pays twice.
Yeah.
If we said today, well, it's unsustainable, so people at work today will have to entirely fund their own pension
Mm.
and pay for their parents' pensions, that would be pretty unfair as well. So
Yeah.
I think in a way, the reason I don't panic about this stuff is you can do these things. The crisis is gradual, so the solutions can be gradual.
So good. Well, that's something. We've mentioned immigration, and I did read a short article just recently that said that Spain, I think it's one of the banks in Spain, has worked out that they're going to need another 35 million immigrants over the next 30 years to fund their state pension. I suspect, that we need something along those lines, maybe less because we don't spend as much on our state pension as Spain does. But of course, firstly, I don't think there may be that number of immigrants around. I don't know, but I suspect that, you're going to have a lot of Western countries going, come in here, give us your money, give us your money. And secondly, indigenous populations increasingly are not wanting immigrants in. So do you think immigration in some form is the answer or part of the answer, or are we going to have to find something without immigration for various reasons?
As you say, Jasmine, it's an incredibly sensitive topic, and the issue of economic migration, people coming here to work, gets rolled in with asylum seeking, illegal migration boats, and all of that. And I think it's important to just have a bit of clarity here. There is a risk, I think, that the economic migrants who we need will be put off by what I see as the rise in right-wing populism. That political parties are outdoing each other in being anti-immigrant at the moment, and my worry is that will actually harm our economy. And as an MP, I would have people saying, it's not fair. People come to this country, they jump the housing queue, they jump the NHS queue, and so on. And yet the truth is that the vast majority of migration, in my view, is beneficial. People on the whole who are motivated enough to travel to another country don't do so to get universal credit. I mean, they're coming to work, they're coming to send money home. And of course, often, if someone comes here as an adult, we haven't had to pay the cost of educating them as a child. So that's economically a win. Many, not all, but many actually will return home at some point. So actually, we often don't then have a later life health and care cost. So in some cases, that's a huge economic win.
Mm,
But
mm,
politically, it is very difficult. But I personally, I think it is part of the mix. And with a growing population needing health and care, guess who the health and care workers of the future are going to be?
yeah,
Often
yeah.
it's migrant workers who, frankly, if I think of the care my late mother and my father have had in the last year or so, overwhelmingly people who maybe second generation British perhaps, but
Mm.
possibly weren't born here. And I'm so grateful to them.
Oh, yes. And then you mentioned at the start health and social care as well as the state pension. Are we really now at the stage where we need to individually set up health insurance, some sort of insurance product early on in life? I mean, I know here I am adding to the costs of your average consumer, but it seems to me already the social care system is broken. The National Health Service in many ways is not working at all. And it seems to not matter how much money we put into it. are we now at the stage where we individually need to set something up or accept that we're going to have to sell our homes if we have one, in order to pay for our own social care, etc.?
I, I guess my starting point would be what I'm going to call prevention. One thing we can do is carry on as we are, have more and more people be sicker and sicker and have to treat more and more sick people and provide social care for more and more people who can't manage at home and so on. But it doesn't have to be like that. And that's why I'm not a pessimist on a lot of this. There are better ways. And if I give you a simple example, so you can't stop an elderly person becoming older and frailer and perhaps having a fall, but you can do something about the second fall and the third fall. So if you intervene early, if you say, well, okay, this person's coming to A&E with a fall, we could put a sticking plaster on and send them home. Or we could have a whole system that kicks into place saying, hang on a minute, if we don't help this person now, they'll be back and they'll be in a long stay bed, or we'll need to pay for, etc., etc. So what you do is you have an assessment and you go and look at the home and you look at, a rail or a step or a Zimmer frame or some high-tech camera thing that spots when they haven't moved for 15 hours, or all that stuff. And technology is going to revolutionize all of this. If we do all of that, then we are benefiting the person who's at the heart of this and their family, and massively saving the taxpayer money. But it requires upfront money when all we're doing is firefighting, and that I think is the challenge. Just on insurance, I suppose social care would be the obvious example. So if you don't want to, quote, sell your home for care, in theory, that is an insurance issue. Most of us won't have catastrophic care costs, but some of us will have truly, will have 7 years with dementia in a care home, that type of thing.
Mhm.
Well, in theory, if we'd all pull that together like we do with car insurance and home insurance, then we'd have the peace of mind and so on. But there's no real private product you can buy at the moment for that. And governments keep, again, putting off tackling this. So I think, again, some sort of social insurance, private insurance mix on social care, we're paying more than we do at the moment, but it would give us that pooled cover that we don't currently have, I think.
I've made some reels kind of about this subject on social media, and quite a few comments have said, but we've got sovereign monetary control. We can just create the money, which bothers me because, in my opinion, the the printing presses have been going far too fast in the last, 2 or 3 decades at least. And printing money has been the problem. I mean, it looks to me, though, like that is what certainly this government is going to do. It's going to be forced to keep printing money and therefore inflating the economy just in order to pay bills.
I'm not sure that's right. I mean, certainly the famous quantitative easing during COVID and all of that, indeed pre-COVID, was a form of, I suppose you could say, printing money. But we're now in the opposite. We're now what they call quantitative tightening. Where the Bank of England is reversing that process. So I don't think there's any evidence that the current government is, quotes, printing money. The opposite, in fact, it's unwinding some of what's gone on in the past. It may borrow, of course. It may
Mm,
borrow more than was expected. Um, but ultimately, you as you say, you put the printing presses on, and people outside the UK say, well, why do I want their money then?
yeah,
It's worth
yeah.
less. So the currency gets devalued, inflation goes up. It's not a free lunch, because ultimately what matters is the productive capacity of the country. Uh, you know,
Yes.
um,
And I mean, if we are going to, and we are clearly are going to increase the age at which one can potentially take the state pension, in other words, make people work for longer. Um, I'm guessing that governments are going to have to enable and encourage companies to keep people on for longer, because it's one thing to be told you have to keep working, and it's another thing to actually find the work at that stage. Was there anything that your government did when you were in power, towards this, or can you see this government doing anything towards this?
Yes, there's a couple of things. So one change that we made was made sacking people for turning 65 illegal. So it used to be, you couldn't sack someone for being a woman or for being black or of another ethnic minority group, but you could sack them for being 65. That was legal. And we got rid of that because actually what should matter is can you do the job, not what's the date
Exactly.
on your birth
Yeah.
certificate.
Mm.
So that was one change we made. But something that's become quite popular is what you'll be familiar, Jasmine, is the midlife MOT
Oh,
idea.
yes,
You know,
yes.
and that's not just about pensions; it's about careers and things like
Mm,
that. Because
mm,
actually, many people could do something into their 60s and beyond,
mm,
but maybe not what they've always done.
Yeah.
You know, and we're not very good at that transition. You know, we think that education and training are for 17-year-olds and 20-year-olds, not for 50-year-olds. You know, so I think we could do much more creatively. So, to give you a simple example, people coming out of the military, often well before state pension age, but might be brilliant coach drivers, lorry drivers, truck drivers, and
Yeah.
you've just got to make that transition possible, and then they can carry on doing something different. So
Yeah.
again, I think we can be creative. The one plus is that because, I mean, it's not quite true to say there'll be no 20 somethings, but there'll be an awful lot less than there are now, relatively. So
Mm.
actually, the effective, successful employer will have to harness the skills of the 50 and 60 somethings. That will be an economic necessity for the bigger employers, particularly. So in a way, necessity will force them to reevaluate the way they look at older workers, and that'll be a plus, I think.
Yes, you've mentioned the midlife MOT. You can find that online somewhere, can't you? I mean,
You,
is it
you,
the
you
government?
can, yes. So there's a sort of online version, and companies like Aviva have promoted it, and
Yeah.
various others, and so on. It needs to be more universal. More people need to know about it, and
Mm.
just doing an online questionnaire is a start, but it's only the start of a process, really.
Yeah, handy. Well, Steve, thank you very much indeed for answering some of my questions. I think, it's a conversation that we as a country need to keep having and just see where we're at and how we can improve things because I'd like us to discuss it now rather than wait for a crunch time and then go, oh heck, what are we going to do? So
Absolutely.
thank you very much for your help on this. This was Steve Webb, former pensions minister, helping me with the issue, as I see it, as of the state pension going forward, how we're going to fund it. I'm Jasmine Birtles from MoneyMagpie.com. This is the Money Magpie Invest podcast. Like, share, tell all your friends about it, and sign up to the Money Magpie Invest newsletter as well. See you next week.